Okay, so all signs point to Washington wanting Caleb Williams. Let's live in a world, Mike T, because we talked about this morning and it's fascinating. Let's live in a world where Caleb Williams does want to go to D.C. We don't know that. It should be pointed out. He hasn't said that publicly. But in a world where Caleb Williams does want to go to D.C. and not Chicago, if you're the general manager of the Bears, tell me how this goes.
Okay, first of all, I've been watching all week reading, and we got a couple of things wrong, so let's clear it up. First of all, Caleb Williams, you don't have nearly the leverage that some people here think you do. First of all, I checked with the league office. He has petitioned to move on to the NFL. They have never revoked that. He cannot go back to college. Secondly, if the four of us represent Caleb Williams, everything we would be thinking about is how quickly do we get to the next deal, which for him will be $55, $60 million a year. So the NIL money is nice and really important for other players. So State Farm commercials, million here, whatever, that's fine. But Caleb Williams, you want to get that clock going ASAP to get to the next contract because that's where the big money is. So he's a really good player, but he has been sacked 83 times, and typically sacks carry over to the NFL, Greeny. So if Chicago wants him, I call up Caleb Williams and say, start looking for your apartments because you could be a Bear in March, April, May, June, July, August. You have no leverage. You're a Bear.
So what you're telling me is that if the Bears decide he's their guy, there is next to nothing he can do about it.
There's nothing he could, not next to. There is zero. You are a Bear, end of story.
Okay, so it's a really interesting conversation because we've been sitting here talking about that and the NIL money and all that. Now, here's my only pushback on that. If I'm Caleb Williams, you know who's not going to get $60 million? Mitch Trubisky, Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold, probably Justin Fields, or he's certainly going to have to work for it in an entirely different way because as important as getting the clock started is getting it started in the right place where you have a chance to show how good you are so that you become, even Justin Herbert, who hasn't done any high-level winning, there was no question they were giving him his deal, and Burrow and Allen and all these other guys. If he winds up getting drafted into a really bad situation, and the Bears situation right now looks better than it has in a while, but there are major reasons for concern.
Yep.
Then you never get to that $60 million.
So let me push back on your pushback, which is, hey, we got Shane Waldron, we got DJ Moore. To your point, we are a better franchise, but the bottom line is you're a Bear because we say you're a Bear and you have no options.
That at the end of the day, that's the end of the day. That's what he's telling us. Marcus, you've heard all this conversation. You've obviously been a part of it on NFL Live and everything else. What's your take on all this at the very top of the NFL draft?
I mean, look, I hear what Mike T is saying, but do you really want a disgruntled quarterback to walk into your building the first day after you draft him? That's number one. Number two is when you have a position of power like Chicago has, you try to leverage the fact that Caleb Williams doesn't want to play with you. It's hard to identify quarterbacks, and everybody has talked about how he could potentially be generational, and they see traits, a lot of traits of the best quarterbacks that we have in the league. So I get it. I would understand the stance from Ryan Poles of not wanting to move or not wanting to capitulate to what Caleb Williams wants. But we've seen this movie before with guys not wanting to be places. We understand that if that is the potential of him walking into a building and everybody in that organization understanding that he really doesn't want to be here, where does that put the Bears?
That's right.
Right? Like, I get it, and you can force his hand, but we've seen this organization and franchise try to find an identity over the last 5 or so years. They've tried to make moves. They kept Eberflus. Ryan Poles brought in as a GM. We've seen the up and down situation of a quarterback. So I hear you, Mike T. And yeah, you have no choice if you Caleb Williams potentially. But you know the choice you have is to go in that building and tell them every day, I do not want to be here. I don't want to play here. And the type of turmoil that's going to create, I don't think it's worth having a guy with maybe a little less talent that can still play at a high level that wants to play for the Chicago Bears.
And let me say this too. It is a time where, and to Swagu's point, I agree with this. If you walk in and say, okay, you have to be a Bear. Well, I don't want to be a Bear. Eberflus might lose his job. Like, they don't want to play in a world of uncertainty and distraction. Poles doesn't want that. Eberflus doesn't want that because both of them could be moving out just as quickly. We've seen this tape on replay, right? We saw it with Trubisky. Then we see it with Fields. Like, this is not new for the Bears in this organization. And so I do think there's more leverage. And again, maybe not, oh, I'm going to get myself drafted somewhere else. But let me tell you, they can. There's a saying in football: you can make me practice, you can't make me practice hard. Like, that dude could walk in and be like, all right, I'm here, but I'm not going to do it. That's more of a distraction for this team than anything else.
Could the Bears look at it and say, maybe we'll be almost as happy or just as happy with Drake May, or maybe just as happy with Jaden Daniels plus a number 1 or whatever else gets thrown into it? If it comes to that, Mike T, again, you're the GM. Now what?
Yeah, then I want multiple first-round picks and a high starter, like a high-ceiling starter from Washington.
To move back one spot.
Yeah, to move back one spot. And then if I go down that road, which I wouldn't do, would I be saying to Washington and Adam Peters, oh, wait, hold on a second, this is the New England Patriots. And now all of a sudden, like, maybe I go back 2 spots. And Ryan Poles did an unbelievable job last year. You talk about maximizing the value of moving back when Carolina wanted Bryce Young, and they had it all done by Indy. So these conversations on Monday, Greeny, are happening. We get through the Super Bowl. Ryan Poles will create a sense of urgency. Again, I would be shocked if they don't take Caleb Williams. But to answer your question, I mean, we would have so much fun leveraging Washington and the Patriots to go get Caleb Williams.
So you think there's that big of a difference between Williams and May and Daniels or the rest of the quarterbacks?
And here's why, because I think you could fix what's wrong with Caleb Williams. You got to clean up those sacks. You got to clean up those turnovers. And I think, and here's one of the things, going back to what Swagu said, I don't want to be a Bear. Well, look, Shane Waldron's our offensive coordinator. Look at the improvement that Geno Smith has. Right. We're going to make you a great player. Come in here open-minded. We have a great plan. We have a real number 1 in DJ Moore. We have a young, improving offensive line. You're going to really like it here, and you're going to stand on the shoulders of the city of Chicago, and you're going to be celebrated since, I mean, Green, you know it better than anybody, Jim McMahon.
Yeah.
So to me, like, there's a great opportunity here, and that's why, to me, like, I hang in there even if it's bumpy at the beginning.
Tannenbaum and Greenberg strong. I'm going to let you know.
This is
strong, bro. He'll Jedi mind trick you in a second.
I will say
pull right back into shot
Here's the thing, too.
Go ahead, Marcus.
Here's the thing, too. Like, Chicago's a great place to play football.
Yeah.
They've just been abysmal as far as the organization. Like, being a Chicago Bear, there's a sense of pride and some stuff that come along with that could take you into another stratosphere if you Caleb Williams and go in there and play at a high level, which everybody thinks you can. The speculation, and I'm glad you pointed it out, G, about people listening and watching us right now, is the fact that if that was to come to pass, if he didn't want to be in Chicago because he's looking at the past history of the franchise and organization, which I agree with Mike T, is in a better situation. But there is also the elephant in the room that his quarterback's coach just went to the team with the 2nd overall pick with a new head coach, and that's trying to start a new era as well. So
in his hometown,
the Washington Commanders, in my opinion, would be more incentivized to do the things that Mike T, that a number 2 team with the 2nd pick wouldn't need to do. You got new ownership in Joe Harris. You got Magic Johnson, a part of that group. You got a new organization that's trying to reface themselves. They may be willing to give up a little bit more to go up and get Caleb Williams than your conventional team that's sitting there at number 2, regardless of how much they're being asked to do it for.
That's right. It doesn't have to be how desperate he is not to go to Chicago as much as it is he may really want to go to Washington. The reality is he grew up in D.C. He went to Gonzaga High School right there in Washington. And so maybe he would prefer that to go there with Cliff Kingsbury. Yeah.
But Greeny, the inverse of that, and we saw this in Carolina, one of the reasons they got fired, it wasn't Bryce Young, it's they passed on C.J. Stroud. So Drake May or Jay Daniels may be a B+, but if Caleb Williams turns out to be an A, Chicago will never, But
that's true every year. But the reality is the generational quarterbacks wind up being generational about 50% of the time. And most of that is going to be based upon the situation into which they walk. Now, again, I'll point out that the Bears' history with quarterbacks is abysmal. If you're a middle linebacker, that's the place that you want to go. But the other side of it is, like, to your point, they have a true number 1 receiver. They have a great offensive tackle they drafted last year, and they have the 9th pick, so they could take Olu Fashanu from Penn State, or Talise Fuaga, or one of these other offensive tackles at number 9. You could have he could be a really good situation. This is less about Chicago, although I hate the uncertainty of their coaching situation.
That's the deal.
Than it is about going to Washington.
Yeah, 100% is the lame duck coach situation that concerns you, right? Is that if you don't know that guy's going to be there, so if he's not there, the whole Waldron conversation is out the door as well, right?
But Jeff, but the rebuttal to that is like, hey, Caleb, like we're building this around you, like we're going to get the best situation.
I know they said the same thing to Mitch Trubisky and Justin Fields, and look how that worked out. I don't like this plan at all. I will just say this: my relationship with Jeff right now is hanging by a thread.